Doesn't give us any metronome or count in. That's good. Okay. So, yeah, as I was saying, I threw out my back playing Final Fantasy VII.
I'm extremely curious.
So what happened was that you know how at the chocobo races and like you had to mash buttons and shit?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was doing.
So it wasn't whacking it to Eris.
No, because
it wasn't
really
whacking it
Eris?
to Barrett. It wasn't whacking it
to Red 13.
To Ketchy.
Ew.
Cat
Red
Sith.
Cat. Who fucking cares?
Who even knows? And I guess who cares?
Yeah, because whatever. I don't even like that game anyway. But anyway,
I always thought it was funny, by the way, that people were like. And maybe this was just my misunderstanding because it was like a header in EGM, but people were like, remember Vincent? It's like that movie My Cousin Vinny. And I was like, it's not really
I never
like that.
Saw that movie. But anyway.
I'm going to pull up the IMDb for you just so you can hear it. Okay.
While you do that, like, seriously, this is exactly what happened. So I had a golden chocobo and I was in the chocobo races. And I'd go hard every time I play any game, whatever I play.
How else are you going to win the chocobo race?
Exactly. So, but I was just smoking all these dudes behind me, but I wasn't letting up. I was going crazy.
Phrasing.
So, and I'm just going hard with the button. I'm like, oh, come on, and then, ah!
Wow.
Myself doing that.
That's awesome.
It was the most, oh my god, hang on. I want to see how this sounds right now. Merry Christmas, fuckface.
Yeah, asshole. Falcons suck. Jizz.
Okay. Well, coming off of that, welcome to the third episode of the Artist and Economist podcast.
Yes, welcome.
Oh, yes, indeed, welcome. The burliest of beat-em-ups.
Well, I was going to say, after starting off with Falcon Jizz, I should probably do the rest of it.
Class it up a bit.
Like Charlie Rose.
I don't...
Or James Lipton.
People that what did you do this week? How was your week? It's been a while since we've done this. How you been, man?
It has been a while, hasn't it? I've been pretty good. It's been just a lot of, laid back summertime jams. I have been trying to stay away from the sun, which is something I've tried to do mostly successfully for about 28 years now. Proud to say I'm still doing it, but it's been warm here, and it's been a great week for me cooking-wise, which is a weird thing to brag about. But my boss caught these crabs.
Oh, you told me about this, yeah.
Yeah, so I made crab cakes, and with the leftover crab, I made crab omelets. Mm-hmm. And yesterday I made pulled pork sandwiches. And this morning I made a pulled pork scramble, which was kind of weird, but then I put it in tacos, and I made some homemade tortilla chips, and I've been killing it, man.
Killing it on the cooking.
Straight up killing it. How about you?
It's been a bit of an up and down kind of week. It's one of those things where you take the good with the bad, but more on point. I could just be as vague as I wanted, really. But
it was a week.
It happened. I am still alive.
There are things that happened, and some of them were things.
You talk about your food and your cooking and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I had the friggin' Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cheesy Bites pepperoni pizza, so how about that shit?
Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
By who made what?
Pizza Hut.
Explain. Oh.
So Pizza Hut.
Is that a promotional tie-in for the fucking movie?
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Dude,
why wouldn't it be?
Because they love pizza.
Speaking of, kind of, not really, but you know what I saw go by the other day? Ice cream truck.
Dude, did you go get anything?
No. First of all, I'm not 3.
Okay, shut up.
Second of all, this dude took off up the street at 25.
Come and
I was
get
like, yeah, Jesus, if there's kids around, what are they supposed to do? Mr. Ice Cream Man, no!
I'll say, I need to find an ice cream truck because I want to get one of those Sonic ice cream bars with the gumball eyes.
Well, that's what made me think of the Ninja Turtles one, because remember getting those as kids and with the gumball eyes? And, the gum was terrible.
You weren't there for the gumball eyes.
If you were doing a spectrum of gum where, the top of the spectrum was, fresh off of the line, Wrigley Spearmint, original. The bottom end of the spectrum would either be those gumball eyes or the gum that came in like packs of cards.
Oh, yeah.
Like that stale, stiff cardboard gum.
Because essentially when you get those gumballs, you're just biting into, like, gum-flavored powder.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
but you're right. You weren't in it for the eyes. I don't remember. I feel like this is true, but you or whoever else are absolutely free to correct me. Did the Ninja Turtle ice cream pops come in the different turtle colors?
I think they did.
I feel like they have to have.
Because, like, the one I distinctly remember seeing is Michelangelo.
See, and I feel like I remember Leonardo, because he was always my favorite.
Yeah. Well, you always got to remember your favorites.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's like, my purple's my favorite color, therefore.
Well, it's funny because as a kid, my Leonardo was my favorite turtle. Yeah. But, like, as I think about it now, it's like, dude, Donatello was probably the coolest.
Yeah.
He was like...
It's like the MASH principle, you know what I'm saying? Remember the show MASH?
Yeah.
And how, like, the most popular guy was, like, the quip-snapping dude who was just, like, you know, like the Fonzie of the platoon.
Hawkeye Pierce.
Yeah.
Alan Alda.
And
classic, by the way.
And what was the guy's name who was, like, the techie dude, like Data or some shit?
I want to say Radar.
Radar, yeah. Yeah, if they remade MASH now, Radar would be, like, the hottest kid on campus. Because it's like, I'm in charge of all your tech. So all that cool shit you want off the internet that exists now?
Or, like, check out this web app I wrote that does all of this insane medical trauma diagnosis for you and also points out the location of all our enemies. And then you can put up pictures and put little hashtags in there and share it with soldiers all over the world.
I think there was an actual article I read that said that, and I'm just thinking, like, you know, yeah, Fonzie over there and the fatigues. You stay over there, buddy.
Do you think there could be a successful show spin-off like that and it would just be called Hash? Like hashtag?
I don't... CBS would probably do it. Fuck them.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true.
Yeah, but other things that happened to me this week. I found out that I got accepted into the Artist Alley at KomoriCon.
That's pretty sweet.
It's pretty cool because...
That sounds sweet. I don't know. That just sounds sweet.
It sounds... Because that's why I applied for it. Like, a friend of mine and I were going to do it, but she likes to take a lot of time on her work, and she's kind of going back and forth if she wants to do it now, considering it's, like, less than a month away. But I'm going to see if I can just kind of bang some shit out real quick. Ride, you know, do the damn thing.
I don't want to sound sexist, but are you really trying to tell me that a woman is having a hard time making a decision on something that doesn't matter? Because I will hear none of it.
Ugh. How could you?
I know, I hate to trade in sexist stereotypes. I did it once for one post on, like, an old blog of mine about how women... This is totally immaterial, but I think I've shared this with you.
So you're just going to incriminate yourself real quick. Go ahead.
I am, but I've asked a ton of people the question, you know... Hey, what's your, like, main deal breaker in a relationship when that topic comes up? And for some reason, women will always tell you that if a guy has a pet bird...
What?
That they're just like, no, that's weird. That's weird.
Sorry,
like,
JonTron.
Yeah, right. Sorry, buddy. I mean, I'm glad you broke through, but sorry to anyone else aspiring to be like you. And it's funny to me because, whatever, I know nothing about birds. I don't care. Birds seem like they're maybe lame pets just because you can't, like... play with them quite the same way.
You can't throw a ball for a bird.
Right. And you can't, like, pet it behind the head like a puppy or, like, cuddle it like a cat. But...
Sure.
And when it gets to the point of, like, really, like, relationship deal breakers. Like, pet bird? Like, what if he's perfect? What if Brad Pitt were like, you know what?
I love this
sick
bird.
Of Hollywood, getting pretty sick of Angelina Jolie. I have a ton of money. I'm classically handsome. I am famous and popular and all of these positive attributes that you know about me. But here's the thing.
I got a parakeet.
Really into parakeets. And people just be like... I don't know. And then I love that they're always
Can't you just have herpes instead?
Well, evidently not. That's usually where it comes next. It's like, all right, what if it were less like that? What if they had, like, an STD? They're like, yeah, but I mean, pet birds are weird. It's like, what do you mean? Like, don't brush that under the rug. That's crazy to me.
I literally could not make a noise in response to that because it was just so outlandishly stupid.
There's no noise to make. All you have to do is just sit there and just think, why? Just why? Why?
Why?
How did my life get to the point where I'm now forced to consider this?
Yeah, seriously. All right.
Well, it sounds like your week was good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And let's get this right back on track. So, with our very first episode, we did a fantasy draft of some random bullshit, Adult Swim cartoons.
Yeah.
So now
That's a good one. If you haven't listened, well, I'm torn. I want to say go listen to it, but if you're already listening to this, you can go do it later.
Yeah. We're busy. We got time.
He'll still be there.
Whatever. So now we're going to take it a little bit in a different direction. We're back doing another fantasy draft, but today's topic is video game consoles.
Yeah. Adult Swim shows and video game consoles. Can you think of two cooler subjects?
Or more pandering. So next fantasy draft is going to be like 80s celebrity cartoon shows.
Or like... I say we just push it in an even nerdier direction and just draft elements of the periodic table.
I totally got bromium.
Hashtag Brolo.
What?
I'm definitely taking silicon first overall.
Dude, gold.
Ladies. You didn't see it, but I just winked at the microphone.
Also, Xenon. That's my favorite. Neon? Oh, Neon would be dope.
I'm now concerned that this might actually be happening. That actually might be fun.
Stay tuned, y'all.
How would hydrogen not be first? It's first in the periodic table for a reason.
Because he's that kind of guy who's just like, first.
That's true.
Yeah, so fuck him.
That's a good point.
The guy, what's second? It's oxygen, isn't it?
No.
Nitrogen?
I don't remember.
Okay, whatever.
I know it's never indecisive.
We'll find one. We know where we can find one. We'll figure that shit out later.
In the meantime, it's going to be a lot more fun, I think, to do video game consoles. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, it's something that we've done spent a lot of our time in our lives doing it. Kind of came up with them thanks to dear old dad buying that Nintendo system, and then buying a Sega Genesis right after that. Because fuck the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, totally. That's a fair.
That's
approach.
my opinion.
That way to start off the draft with just like, by the way, I'm coming into this biased as fuck.
Well, because that's entirely the point of a draft.
I wouldn't say that's entirely the point.
Well, for me it is, because the only way I'm ever going to have any perspective on choosing a game console that I would want to play my games on would be things that is directly relatable to me. Yeah. I played a Super Nintendo. I didn't own one. And we were brothers. We came up in the same house. We had a Sega Genesis. We didn't have a Super Nintendo.
I'm aware of that.
But it'll also inform a lot of our picks, so
that's
now
great.
We have to decide who goes first.
That's a good point. I don't think we really prepped for that.
We'll do a fucking rock, paper, scissors. We'll do it next to the mic so you can hear it if we do it.
Do you think the mic would pick up the Rochambeau battle?
What is that again?
Where you come on, South Park?
No.
Kick each other in the nuts super hard?
Rock, paper, scissors? Why would a company named Franco-American make Italian food?
That's a good shake. I've got a coin.
All right.
It'll be easier.
All right. Boop, 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 boop.
It is tails.
So you get to go first.
The funniest part about this is we just spent like a minute and a half on a thing that won't matter because we have different first picks anyway, I'm sure. But, all right, so any reason to delay getting into it, or should I just get into it?
Just jump straight fucking into it.
I'm going to jump into it. First overall pick in the console fantasy draft, NES.
All right,
I don't think I need to explain why necessarily. By the way, I prepared for this one a little bit better. I have little bullet points.
So do I.
I felt like I was making a little PowerPoint presentation. I was like,
yeah,
work has taught me so much.
Well, yeah, because you want to get your thoughts on paper so you don't forget shit. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy to come up with something and then say, oh, wait a minute, I'd take that first.
Yeah. I had something for this.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah, I did.
We don't want to archer it.
That's true. But, again, I don't feel like I have to say a lot. It's basically the first, real home console.
It's like Atari.
Well, yeah, but the thing to me, I thought about putting Atari there from a historical standpoint. I actually really did. But the thing that separates it from me is that Atari, the graphics were nowhere near the right level for it to be successful. And the Nintendo, on the other hand, was it was a home console, but the graphics had evolved to a point, and they'd gotten some of the kinks out of the game design system.
Yeah.
To the point where it's now these things mean something.
Yeah.
If you did Zelda on the Atari 2600,
it's called Adventure.
It would make no fucking sense at all. You'd be like, what do I do?
And
this is
a lot of people did.
And weirdly, the controller, you think back to the NES, it's this is literally the simplest controller possible.
Yeah.
But it was such an evolution in terms of it didn't have a dial or a bunch of weird switches like the old systems did.
It wasn't
and
a number
had two
pad.
buttons. It didn't have a number pad, and you're weirdly this evolves.
Funny,
things.
it's cool because you mentioned that because the D-pad was something that Gunpei Yokoi himself got a game developer's engineering achievement for.
That's funny
because
considering how simple it is.
Because think about joysticks,
that's
man.
It. Yeah.
Because when they made the Game & Watch systems, that's where it came from. But also in connection to what you just said about what its impact on more than just gaming. Because when you look at things like Atari and Intellivision, it was a nerd's kind of just a little escape thing.
Right.
It was fun with computers, and that was really all it was. It was really niche. When Nintendo came around, they launched it in conjunction with, like, it can be more than just this niche thing, and it became a pop culture phenomenon.
Right.
When, like, the news started reporting on, like, game cartridges selling out and saying people, like, kids all want the new games and the magazine associated with them, and the TV shows that got produced starring the characters of the consoles.
Exactly.
I mean, you've done something right, like, because, arcade characters like, Donkey Kong cereal, Mario Brothers cereal,
yep.
the Nintendo cereal system. Like, that stuff doesn't exist in, like, those Atari days, because Atari was just kind of like, what is this? It's boops and blips.
Yeah.
Like, Pong made sense.
Well, that's what I was saying, right? Is, like, the whole concept of this, like, graphical evolution to make it where it's, like, 8-bit sound, 8-bit graphics, whatever,
Yeah.
like, they mean something. I dare you to ask 10 people, what's the Super Mario Brothers theme?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
you could probably do it with Legend of Zelda, but, like, the Super Mario Brothers theme is probably one of the most ubiquitous pieces of music culturally, like, of all time at this point, or at
Yeah.
least in modern history.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows it.
Yep.
And, like, that level of evolution. And the other thing I wanted to mention real quick was just, the games, obviously the Marios, the Zeldas, the Donkey Kongs, the Metroids, whatever was on there, like, those franchises that still exist today exist for a reason, because the first versions of them were awesome.
Yep.
So great. Perfect console. Came around at the perfect time.
It elevated...
Easy first pick for me.
It elevated the perspective of gaming from, like, that kind of, like, distraction type of hobby like the arcade games used to be.
Right.
To that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like...
I think you could do it home with, like, saves, and you didn't have to spend a ton of money on
and,
it.
like, because you look at the kind of approach you take to something like Pong and then compare it to something you take to, like, going way far ahead, like Mass Effect. Like, it's a dedication. Mm-hmm. It's an art. It's a science. It's a majesty thing. It's beautiful. And it all kind of just started with that.
Yep.
So, good pick.
Pretty natural first pick. I don't think there's too much drama there.
No, you really can't pick anything better than that.
Word.
So,
all right, what do you got?
Hang on, I'm just going to take a sip of my giant Denver Broncos mug of water.
Go Broncos. Please, please, Broncos, do better this year than last year. That's my only wish for you.
If only I cared about football anymore. Anyway, so my very first pick is... And if you know who I am, it's no surprise at all.
Yeah.
The Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I knew you were doing that.
So, the Sega Genesis, for me, represented a big turning point because it felt like it was the first console that was really memorable to me.
Right.
The Nintendo, sure, like, it was in the house and we played Mario and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a bunch of shit like that. But the Genesis was the first, like, console I felt I had an actual connection with, which is a really interesting thing to say, but again, I'm the artist here, so that's how I talk about things.
Well, it's funny, because I was actually going to say the same thing. I had the Genesis at 2 as well, for largely the same reason.
Yeah.
And it's because it's the first system that felt like it was ours. Nintendo always felt like it was Dad's or, like, someone else's.
Yeah.
And it came up during just a different era.
Yeah, and so when I didn't also take that decision lightly because I would have taken, like, a Nintendo.
Right.
Because, starts a legendary franchise and whatever.
Culturally, you can't argue Genesis over NES, but nostalgia-wise, you definitely can.
Yeah. So, when I think about Sega, what I think about is it also, like, not only the first relationship with the console, but also, like, what it meant in terms of technology to me. Like, when they did the first CD-based add-on, or when the 32X came out, you can look at those objectively and say, oh, those were failures because of sale dates and shit like that, but it cemented Sega's identity with me as a consumer and as a fan, that they were the ones who were the most artistic, the dreamers. They wanted to do something new and different every time, and they were always ready to kind of eat that cost up.
Yeah.
So, in conjunction with having, again, like, take your marketing things of, like, blast processing and shit, just take all that stuff out of it and just look at the games themselves. You can say, like, multi-platform releases, they're exactly the same. I honestly continued to prefer every game on Genesis because, like, it's sights and graphics, whatever, but if it plays better. I liked just the way Genesis games played and the diversity that was in the actual, like, lineups, because when people play Super Nintendo games, they talk about Super Mario World, the Donkey Kong countries, and lots of other games that, to me as a player, feel kind of similar. They're side-scrolling 2D platformers, which there are a lot of, and a lot of them are fun.
Right.
But when I look back at, like, some of the best Genesis games, like, I think about shooting games, action games, adventure games, racing games, sports games even. You cannot compare the sports game experience from Genesis to SNES. You can't.
Not at all.
I actually just did this recently. I had NHL 94 for the Genesis on my Hyperkin Retron 5, which was the best purchase I've made in my life.
Jealous.
And so I have your copy of NHL 94 on SNES.
Yep.
And I tried playing that with my dad. Our dad.
I was like, you don't... Unless something has changed, you didn't need to specify my...
Fuck you, Jerry.
Possessive.
Anyway.
Jeez.
So I was trying to play that with Dad, and it was slow, and it was choppy, and it was gross.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
I feel like the control's a little weirder. Like, it's not as smooth for whatever reason.
It's not as smooth.
I don't know shit about the specs.
It's not as smooth as because of the processing, actually. That's the one thing that Genesis did better. And it's actually kind of an unspoken thing, too. If you wanted RPGs, you went to SNES. If you wanted action and shit, you went to Genesis.
Right.
And so I think that's what kind of drew the line for me, was that the experiences that Genesis offered connected to me more than SNES did. They did not have Super Punch-Out.
Nope.
But goddamn, everything else.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and part of the reason I had Sega at number 2 is basically the first thing you mentioned about Sega as a whole being the dreamers, not afraid to take chances or whatever.
Yeah.
I think you see a lot of the future of the industry in every Sega console, but especially the Genesis. Like, they were not afraid to look ahead, with lock-on cartridge technology, which with like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I think they had probably planned to roll out further.
They wanted to have it all be one thing, but
right. If not for, I'm assuming, like the impending new wave of consoles coming out or something along those lines. But that was a great idea. The Sega Channel, which not a lot of people remember, but Sega's partnering with cable companies to deliver that like solid state memory or flash memory or whatever it was.
It was actually delivered through coax cable.
Yeah, through a coax. Like, it's basically just the precursor. It's like video game Netflix for Sega specifically, and it was wonderful. I still have yet to find anything at all like it, with the exception of maybe like Steam, kind of. But
Steam is all about like the actual marketplace for buying games,
and we're talking about what happened in like the early '90s too, the mid '90s. It's insanity.
The thing that was always funny to me too was like the test drive section of the Sega Channel, where you'd play games that weren't even released yet,
right?
And you'd get like a half-hour demo. I remember playing Pinocchio that way, which was honestly a lot more playable than the SNES version, if my memory serves me right. Earthworm Jim 2, when that was brand new, holy shit. And remember when we tried to beat Shining Force in a month?
I do.
Yeah, impossible.
It was very impossible, but it was worth it, because that was...
Peter the Phoenix, boy.
What a goal.
Dude. I remember getting, finally gotten the promotion system done.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
That game... I think the Sega's a great pick. I thought real hard about putting it 1, but I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Over the NES.
However, I mean, you can't put it over the NES, but to me, I don't see a lot of debate that it's number 2.
Oh, hell yeah. Alright, so, now...
Well, it shouldn't necessarily come as a surprise, considering all the touch points we had in the Genesis one, but my second pick is going to be the Super Nintendo.
Alright.
I think the Super Nintendo is a terrific, terrific system. I mentioned in the NES one that, it launched all these legendary franchises.
Yeah.
I don't think those franchises would be as legendary if they weren't catapulted so far forward without their SNES iterations.
Like Link to the Past, Super Mario World.
Super Mario World,
Super
Metroid, even like Super Mario RPG and Super Punch-Out to a lesser degree, and like Yoshi's Island and whatever else you happen to have, like Donkey Kong Country. All of these games on the SNES are pretty considerably better than their 8-bit counterparts, and I think that really resonated with a lot of people. Yeah. The SNES was fun. It has some of my all-time favorite games on it. By the way, if we ever really want to drive ourselves crazy, we should do a draft of games. That would be impossible.
Dude.
My board is 148 games long.
It'd be that long, and also it would take like 5 hours to discuss
exactly.
why like Sonic 3 was above Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
No, you jackass, no!
Shadow of the Colossus isn't even on the list, how dare you?
Dude, it's the same game as Eco, and I put Eco at 113, and I've never even played it.
And I've never even played it.
But... like the SNES, we've talked about this before, and I've made this point. I don't remember if you agreed or not. You're free to disagree, but if you had to rank, because like the competition was always Genesis versus SNES, like which is better, and the answer usually depends on which one you grew up with. Yeah. But like if you had to rank objectively in some measure, like the best games on both systems, Sega might end up with more just because it had like an underrated amount of depth to its library. Yeah. But the top like 6 or 7, Nintendo would probably have like 5. Just because, like, they're so strong at the top.
Yeah.
They're so strong. It's a great system.
And
I find myself going back and playing those games all the time, all the Mega Man X's.
what's funny is that every time I try and go back and play them outside of, like, third-party things, like, if I wanted to go back and try and play, like, Donkey Kong Country, after the first world, I'm like, well, I'm done. I've had my experience.
But, I mean, even then, isn't there something to the fact that the idea, like, appeals to you? That you're kind of, like, captivated to go back?
But at the same time, I'm also captivated to play more of my Genesis games.
Yeah.
So, but what's also interesting, too, is that, like, you know, people talk about the reason why certain franchises are so popular and shit like that. But one of the things that's interesting is, like, Legend of Zelda. Like, Legend of Zelda was... It's unprecedented how popular that fucking series is.
Yeah.
And so people always kind of get on its case because it doesn't change or doesn't evolve or doesn't do anything that they want it to do in terms of, like, gameplay innovation. But it's weird because if you think about it in those kind of terms, it's not about the stories that get... It's about the stories that get told forever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, for some reason, the story of boy, princess, saving the world, those stories matter.
Tales old as time.
Yeah.
I mean... Every fairy tale, every Disney movie.
Yeah, it's not about a story.
That.
It's not about a story that goes on forever. It's a story that gets told forever.
Yep.
There you go.
Exactly.
All right.
So yeah, I don't think there's been a lot of drama so far. I think these have all been exactly the right picks in exactly the right spots.
We're might throw in a curveball. You never know.
I'm ready for it.
Atari Jaguar. No.
I was like, wow, that would have been a curveball.
There is
that would have been a 12-6 like vintage Barry Zito curveball.
There is no fucking way that console would be on any list. I'm laughing about it because it'd be so fucking stupid.
It'd be
fucking
awesome.
A. All right, so my next pick,
number 2 for you. What do you
Sony
got?
PlayStation.
Ooh,
PlayStation 1.
Nice.
And it's one of those things where, because we know what we're talking about when we talk about video games because we've played them all our lives.
Sure.
But when just looking at what PlayStation did, not only for video games in terms of, like, bringing it to the mainstream and shit, looking over all of that, just looking at the quality of games alone, and also I attribute it to having the platform for the game that pretty much changed my life forever. Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
I played that when I was 10.
That was one of my bullet points. And, like, the quality of games, especially, like, MGS.
Yeah, like, just watch the cord there.
Sorry.
Because you don't want to go rattling.
Sorry.
I'm just saying.
Apologies if your audio sounded like it was a little weird. By the way, this is a good time to mention, my window's open because it is hot as balls today.
It is.
So if you hear any background traffic noise, I guess apologies, but hashtag sorry not sorry. It's way too warm.
Jesus.
I know. I've become what I hate. Anyway, continue.
So it's just, when I look at the amount of games that for somehow have like a nostalgic quality for me, a lot of them were on PlayStation, and a lot of them carried this weird mystique.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like, I remember when I couldn't find Tomba. I remember when I couldn't find a game.
Still basically can't. I mean,
it's now on PlayStation Network now. But
like in physical form.
And even then, like, you know, games that were just kind of, like, it had Mega Man X4. Like, a lot of Capcom games for it were always my favorite.
Right.
What else was on there? Jumping Flash. Like,
Jumping Flash was underrated. No one, I feel like, knows about that. It's awesome.
And not to even, like, the RPGs that came out on it. I wasn't always a big RPG guy, but it was always a place where people went.
It was the home of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, and, that alone. And... I'm stuttering here because it's one of those things where it's like I could just list off individual games and tell you why they're good.
You don't have to. I get what you're saying.
But, like, everything about the PlayStation just felt right the first time to bring analog sticks into it with its new controllers, the addition of Rumble with the Rumble Pack, whatever that came later.
Right.
But the PlayStation, it just did so much and presented so many opportunities for so many people. And I think it was the biggest game changers in the industry since ever.
Yep.
That's really... Ever since Nintendo said, we're going to try and revive a failed, dead industry.
Yep.
And so when fucking Nintendo laughs at you and says, like, yeah, right, a game console from Sony, after they, you know, dick moved with them at the CES in 1991. But, like, people know that story, I'm hoping. But...
I don't, but I won't make you tell it.
Right, it'd be too long. Anyway, they did so much. A General Electronics company said, no one else has ever been successful at being more than a game company, but fuck it, we're going to do it. And then they did it, and it was amazing.
It's funny, too, because I'm looking at my notes. I had PlayStation at 7, which now that I think about it, feels a little low, because I had a lot of the same notes. Like, that was Sony's first crack at it. They were like, we're going to make a console, and what they came out with was brilliant. Yep. I still, to this day... have no idea how you could just be like, okay, here's what we've observed in the industry. Here's where we kind of, like, think it should go. And then here's what we made, and it's a hit. And how did you possibly do that? It's insane to me. It is absolutely mind-boggling. They did a terrific job. It's like you said, like the IPs that they had really helped carry it forward, but it all felt very like harmoniously put together.
It was a shift in actual like thinking.
Yeah,
because when you look at the crazy Tokyo metropolitan Nintendo mindset of you are here to play this game that we provide on this system in this way. Mm-hmm. That is what Nintendo had always been about, and third parties just kind of had to step in line because for the longest time they were the only game in town. When Sony came in and said, "Hey, check out the specs of our console. You can make whatever you want."
Yep.
And they openly invited and said, "Hey, you want to try making games for us? Hey, we can do that too."
Which is great, because it should always be a collaborative process.
Because, like, you look around at, like, 90s Nintendo, and they pretty much tried to embody every negative stereotype of the Japanese Zaibatsu. They really did. Anything that you could look at it from, like, Japanophobic 90s movies, that was what Nintendo was. And so when this bigger, friendlier Japanese company comes along saying, "Hey, come on in, you can make games for us, maybe."
Nice.
So, there we go. Number 2 for me.
Well, and it's funny, and looking at it, maybe I should have listed this higher, but you're exactly right. And to me, the other big thing, and I'll use this as a segue into my next pick, because it was the same era of console that, I'm going to pick, really imaginative games as well. Okay. One of the last systems I feel like that really tried that, because, we could talk...
Sega Saturn.
We could talk endlessly about what the games industry has become, and the kind of games you see on shelves anymore, and it's all FPS games, and hyper-realistic sports games. There's not as much variety, because... People know what sells, and there's not necessarily as much need for creativity, and you're kind of seeing like an indie scene come back. But PlayStation era, if you listed off 5 random games on the PlayStation, you'd be like, wow, these are all very different games. If you were like, all right, NFL Game Day, Croc, Rayman, Crash Bandicoot,
Bushido Blade,
and Bushido Blade, you'd be like, there is nothing in common across all of these games, but like they're all great ideas. They're all pretty well executed. Like, you open yourself up to more flops that way, but, you open yourself up to a lot more of that creative energy. Yeah. Which is why my third pick is going to be the Nintendo 64.
Oh, all right.
The Nintendo 64. By the way, I've now taken 3 Nintendo consoles, which is not where I saw this going.
Hey, look at that.
And there's a good chance I'll take another one next.
But if I take it first.
But the Nintendo 64 is terrific. 3D gaming in the modern sense was really started by that era, the PlayStation and the 64.
Yeah.
And the 64, to me, I think the thing I find most charming about it is just, it made no apologies about what it was. It was a game console for fun games. It was colorful and bright. You could pick your own...
You could even get colored controllers.
Yeah, you could pick your own color controller. It had all of your classic franchises represented in ways that more or less came through exactly as they expected them to. You know, if you were like,
except for Earthbound.
Well, you were like, if you're going to make a 3D version of Super Mario, people are like, fuck yes, let me at that. And it's awesome. And Ocarina of Time, especially for its era, was awesome. And there's some misses, like Donkey Kong Country was probably a miss, but like, look at all the other crazy things that came out.
Dude, Super Smash Brothers.
Super Smash Brothers, the original. Perfect example. GoldenEye, and to a lesser extent, Perfect Dark. You know, even the sports games on there, while definitely not simulation-y, like, you got Blitz, you got Gretzky hockey, you've got Ken Griffey Jr. baseball.
It reminded you that games were for fun.
Exactly. Mario Kart is another perfect example.
We still play that.
I absolutely would play that right now. If someone came by with a controller and a TV and were like, Mario Kart is on. You're playing it. I'd be like, well, put the podcast on hold. This is what we're doing now.
I kind of want to do that right now because you got a Wii over there.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could, but it was hypothetical.
We're not going to do that to you people. That was all hypothetical. We're not going to do it right now.
But yeah, third pick, Nintendo 64, just for fun. Just because it was the last system that I really remember owning and just being like, man, this is just straight up pure fun.
Yeah.
Oh, also, controller. Surprisingly awesome.
Yeah.
One of the better controllers.
when I remember I was telling Dad this like just a few days ago when we were playing Mario Kart 64 on the Wii. I was like, I remember the first time I ever played a Nintendo 64, and it freaked me the hell out because I was playing. It looks
visually strange. Like, what did they do?
And then it made sense as soon as you held it,
right?
Because you were like, where do I put my third hand to hold this other handle? And then when you realize, I don't have to.
It was such a thoughtful choice that really made sense with your natural hand position. Like, I remember people, at least myself, being like, why is the Z button on the back?
Because it's like...
and that's like the modern trigger equivalent on any controller you see now.
Yep.
It made total sense. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
This has been a great draft so far.
It really has. A lot of fun. This has been fun. We should do these more often.
Absolutely.
Get drunk and do it. But I don't know why I did that voice. But
this is a little weird. If that's what you're going to do when we get drunk for one of these, dude, we're not doing it.
When I get drunk, I get smart. Anyway, so, okay, hearing what you just said about you might be taking another Nintendo console, I think I might have to shift up my list a bit.
I don't care if you do. Take whatever you want.
All right, so for my next pick, I'm taking the Nintendo Wii.
Ooh.
And it's funny because I wrote it down here on this list of like the reason that I wanted the Wii on here was the same reason I actually wanted to take the Genesis. Because coming back from what you said about the Nintendo 64, games are about fun. Games are about interesting things that you've never seen before. The Wii is still like the console that I have in my home where I has like the biggest game library.
And it feels like the last, refuge of fun games still, right?
Yes, it does. Even the Wii U, like right now when I'm playing, like I'd rather play my Wii U versions of games than anything else right now, just because of the way it feels to play it.
Well, and if you offered me like Halo 5 and Mario Kart 8, like I love Halo, I love the franchise. Yeah. I'm fine with the Xbox and its things, but like, if you were just, like, casual, sit down, pick one, I'd be like, Mario Kart 8. Not a question.
Yeah, and what's also funny, too, is that, like, even when it came to things that weren't even explored ever, because, like, I look at my games that were even more niche-driven. Like, I mean, you can look at the Mad Worlds and stuff, but even for me, Muramasa the Demon Blade, Vanillaware's first, like, game since Odin Sphere or whatever game they made last, on Nintendo. On the console that everyone is so quick to dismiss as not a hardcore machine, made for little kids, can't do HD, can't do whatever, and it has some of the single greatest games I've played last generation.
It absolutely does.
And even what also was really cool, because it was such like it wasn't like an overpriced thing to develop for, because it was essentially the last generation with different inputs instead. So you can get into that whole debate, whatever, about what games mean to you. But what was cool was it opened up this idea to port some of the original like arcade things. So when I saw Ghost Squad and House of the Dead available for the Wii, and I was just like, this is going to make
still play a good amount of.
Yeah, which is, oh my god, I was like, hey, you know those things that remind you of happy fun times at an arcade? Those still exist. You want them? $20.
And I think Nintendo, again, I mean, not to beat the dead horse.
Fucking trucks.
But not to beat the dead horse, but I think Nintendo is still the best at that of anyone, of providing that kind of experience.
That's what it's honestly felt like whenever I turn on my Wii U. It feels like it's a console made to play games and have fun. Every time I turn on my Xbox One, I'm kind of just like, do I want to play Titanfall, or do I want to watch some stupid shit on YouTube? Or do I want to just use this as a vessel to turn on my cable box to watch TV?
You say that dismissively. Xbox One is on my list for that reason as a positive.
Well, I like it. I like my Xbox One. I just wish I had more reasons to play it.
I think, that makes sense.
I mean, because I actually bought it to play Dead Rising 3. It was an exclusive, and I was just like, well, I'm getting that one. So I can talk about why that's actually going to segue nicely into something else I'm planning. That's going to be nice.
Ooh,
but
foreshadowing.
But yeah, just coming like right down to the Wii. Don't do that.
Come on.
Because a car just drove by and you couldn't even hear it.
Oh,
anyway.
We'll check the tape.
Check the tape. But like, when I think about the Wii, and I think about what it offers, and again, in those unique experiences, where was the Xbox or PlayStation's answer to like Rhythm Heaven?
Yeah.
Or Muramasa even.
Or
Mad World.
Well, and it's not entirely related, but, where were Sony and Microsoft's answers
to Mario?
To motion control, which you saw them very quickly scramble to get into.
Oh, yeah.
For better or worse, I don't love the Wii remotes. It's a little buggy, but, it worked more or less most of the time. And where were Sony and Microsoft's answers to like a real virtual console? The Wii seemed like it was really the first one that in earnest like embraced that concept.
The problem for me was that the price was there.
Yeah.
Because, when you have people holding on to old licenses and shit, it's like, we're paying for hosting, so you have to pay $5 for a game you've already bought. Like, there were some fundamental things, like a problem with the Wii and even the Wii U later.
Of course.
But when it comes down to games, which is the reason why we're even making this list in the first place.
Yep.
When it comes to games, I still have like every game I've ever bought for the Wii.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? They're great.
Yeah.
They're so fun.
They are.
I bought a Wii recently just to get the Metroid trilogy.
There you
because
go.
I loved the Metroid Prime games. Absolute blast.
Yep.
I like it. Solid pick.
Wii, man.
Oh, yeah.
You want to hear a fucking nerdy ass story? I was hanging out with I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, and this was like right when the Wii was a phenomenon, like an E3 or so after, when like everybody was playing it and everybody wanted one and it was selling out like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the E3 press conference with a friend of mine, huddled around a computer. We were holding onto our Wiimotes and high-fiving with them. It's the dumbest, most fucking retarded thing ever.
Wow.
But that's just, it was funny because that's just how excited we were that Nintendo was on top again. That's just how, that was the extent of how much we liked that.
I think you just broke my brain. Just right down the middle.
Can you imagine with his long hair? Just like, yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along. This has been so much fun.
Oh, hell yeah.
My fourth pick. This one actually not too difficult for me. Kind of surprised it didn't get taken higher. Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah, I thought about it, but go ahead.
Well, okay. There's just a couple things. I think, again, like you've been mentioning, for a lot of these, it hinges on games.
Ooh.
And the Genesis had an underratedly awesome, pretty great library of
Yes, it did.
very, very unique games. The Sonic Adventures or whatever, I stand by
System
them
sellers,
as,
sure.
I stand by them as like fun system sellers or whatever. Resident Evil, a lot of people would talk about, and it's like, fine, that's great. But to me, what really defined the Genesis were like the
Jet Grind Radio.
Yeah, the Jet Grind
Yes.
Radios, the Ready to Rumble boxing.
Yeah.
Power Stone is like a unique
Dude,
concept
every
of fighting game.
single fucking Capcom game ever made was
Yeah.
best on Dreamcast.
Agreed.
Period.
The 2K Sports franchise, I
Yeah.
actually thought was great.
The
There was a
solid
real-
competitor to Madden.
Yeah.
And even when they went multi-platform, Sega still had a hold on it with its ESPN license, saying like, now you only have to pay $20.
Yeah. Oh man.
EA didn't like that.
It was actually $20 less. It was only $40,
Right.
as I remember it. But still, like, it was great that that foundation of real sports franchise
And
competition.
competition, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. The Choo Choo Rockets, the Shenmues, to whatever extent, great individual games, very fun, very colorful. And again, Sega has a history of pushing the envelope forward in ways that the industry might not just be ready for. The Dreamcast was
the
really
modem.
it was really the first quote unquote online system in theory.
Yeah.
The little VMU, I see that as a precursor to like the modern touchscreen phenomenon because they meant it as like a little
Asymmetric gaming, too. Like, I look at the Wii U and compare it to that.
Yeah.
Like, a screen in your controller, what the fuck's that going to do?
And again-
a thing that I can take with me that's also kind of like a Game & Watch style mini-game that I can connect back to my main game. Holy shit.
And the Dreamcast came out just before 2000, and the Wii U came out like a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Which is nuts. That's like 15 years ahead of its time, more or less. And it didn't work that way.
Well, I mean, because then you could look at the
VMU wasn't-
GameCube and shit.
Well, and the VMU wasn't a touchscreen, and like it was pretty pixelated, which I thought was a big
The technology
missed
wasn't
opportunity.
there, but they went for it anyway.
Right.
But I mean, because like Nintendo had better success with the Game Boy connectivity when the Game Boy Advance came out.
And honestly, I imagine a world where the Dreamcast is higher on this list if they just hadn't backed the wrong technology of those like GD-ROMs.
Proprietary bullshit.
Made it tough for developers to really want to hitch their wagon
And
to it.
crazy piracy.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time that I burned games, and I thought this wasn't going to work. And then it did, and I was like, this just works?
I know, right?
It's like, you put a friggin' ISO file, then make it launch. It's like, okay, now I have every game I want.
I personally never did that because I'm not a bastard. An evil, heartless bastard that wants to cripple the lives and dreams of the hardworking engineers. But
It was
hey, to each their own.
It was a different time. It was a different era. It was
sounds like you're defending like when your grandpa says something racist. It was a different era. They didn't know what they were doing, okay? You can't judge me for that.
I want to meet Ross's, like, grandma. You can't say that, but that's what he is.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. So let's just back away from that topic immediately. So we're on our fourth picks now, right?
Yeah.
This is fun, though. You want to take it to like sixes? So
Sure.
like 6 picks and shit?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's add a bonus pick. I like it.
I can do
This
it.
is
And then
fun. I've got a
mentions.
deep enough board.
Yeah, and honorable mentions will go in there as well at the very
Yes,
end.
absolutely.
But for my next pick,
Fourth pick for you.
my
8th
fourth pick,
overall.
the original Xbox.
Ooh, nice. That I actually had the Xbox at 8, so you're right in line with my board.
Sweet. I take the original Xbox because following up on your Dreamcast pick, it was like the only thing that Sega fans like myself got as a Dreamcast 2.
Yep.
Sega and Microsoft were unusually really tight-knit around the same time that the Xbox was coming out. Whether it was good relations or swapping of executives or whatever that caused that thing there, it was really fucking cool to hear that, like, hey, you're getting a new Crazy Taxi, you're getting Shenmue 2 on the Xbox, and a bunch of other kick-ass games that are going to be made from Sega to come here. And you can, whatever, Virtua Fighter went to PlayStation. I didn't care about Virtua Fighter at the time.
Sure.
But, getting the multi-platforms and Sega releases and all the unique content, getting that kind of flavor from an American console, it was interesting. It was just a really interesting thing to have. And also compared to, it was by extension that continued innovation of consoles with the original Xbox.
Right, which is a big thing, I think, for a lot of these picks we made.
Because we made a big deal out of Sony making their foray into video games with the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Microsoft making their foray into
Their
games.
very first attempt, it was just like, wow.
And it was better than every other console at its time.
Yep.
And you can, take whatever xenophobia of, bellwether markets in Japan and across the world. People cared more about the Sony brand than the Microsoft brand, whatever.
Fine.
You can have a lot of those discussions, but when it comes right down to it, my fondest memory of the Xbox was you got it for your birthday. And then we went on vacation in that summer, and we had Morrowind.
Yes, we did.
And all I remember from us going to a beach for the whole week was us sitting in the basement, taking turns off of Morrowind, and drinking vanilla Coke and just having fun.
You just really, really push the nerd quotient of this podcast higher. Because, I would argue, especially now, that we are not quite that level of, it's not like we're just, mother's basement, Cheeto, Mountain Dew stereotypes over here.
We drink classy beer.
Well, and I love the coast. I love going to the beach.
Yeah.
It was great, but I feel like there's something to be said for when a system and a game just transfix you in such a way that all you want to do and all you can imagine doing with your free time is playing that. And it's extremely rare, especially anymore. Maybe it's age, maybe it's just a different industry, but that's one of the last real times that's exactly what happened. I was like, I want nothing more to do than to play this, and when I'm done, you're playing this.
What's funny, too, is I'm just now noting this because I'm reading my notes and thinking about what we've discussed here today. Mm-hmm. You talk about the Nintendo and the jump to the Super Nintendo and what it meant for the franchises.
Yep.
For me, that was what it was for Sega.
Yeah,
because the Saturn didn't take off and the Dreamcast didn't really take off much. But when it came to Xbox, Jet Set Radio Future, by itself, is enough to make me put it on the list. Because holy fucking shit, that game, I lived in that game for a while.
That game was awesome.
So fucking good. It's again, I'm struggling to find exact words because I could just list names of games off. And to a lesser extent, actually, one of the biggest selling points of it was Xbox Live and online multiplayer.
Which, again, was why it was at 8 on my list.
Dreamcast 2, baby.
Well, it's just for pushing it forward,
Yeah.
It was really the first modern, if you want to play online, this is
where you go.
This is how you do it. And, this would be a great time for anyone that's, a PC sympathist to be like, wow, you've made a bunch of picks, all of which had 0 online compared to the PC. I get it, but, it's still pretty not debatable, if you ask me, how important that was for consoles.
Because even you owe all of your PC gaming experiences to consoles. You do.
How do you figure?
Because when you look at in terms of the popularity of the video game industry, people talk about their old people who played PC games back in the day talk about things it had Doom and Wolfenstein and all those kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it also had Monkey Island adventure games. Tesla or whatever the hell that adventure game series was that Yahtzee mentioned. But they talk about a lot of classic franchises. For me, we didn't have a PC growing up, so those weren't there. But when I think about what has made bigger strides in the games industry, you don't talk about Monkey Island. You talk about Super Mario Brothers. You don't talk about you talk about Doom and stuff because those are immediately relative things.
I guess what you're saying is these games for PC were developed because PCs existed, and consoles didn't. And then
when consoles existed, when people had more freedom to develop for them and had like more of an interest in the console gaming market, because when you look at PC gaming, it was a clusterfuck. Working with DOS to get shit running, and even then, when like you didn't even have to, when you were just working off of a PC, like PC games were suited for specific styles of games. Consoles were way more diverse.
Right.
Crazy more diverse. You want a real-time strategy game, you go to a PC. You want a first-person shooter, you can be a bit snobbish about it, but you usually go for a PC. You want that mouse control. Stuff like that.
So you're saying essentially the consoles sparked a quote-unquote like renaissance in
exactly.
the PC gaming
creative
world.
renaissance with the console market that the PC didn't really have, and then they kind of complement each other to now where it's like, it doesn't even matter at this point, at least to me, or like access to, like the benefits of PC gaming for me don't outweigh the convenience of what a console offers to me. I don't want to think about what my computer is doing in order to run something. I just want it to work.
Agreed.
But anyway, coming back to my initial point I was going to make about online gaming, it's something I never cared about, but Xbox Live made me care.
Right.
One of the very first games I played online was Unreal Championship. Fucking A.
Awesome.
I remember.
That game's terrific.
And people talk a lot about like bad communities on online games. That was one of the weirdest, most supportive communities I was ever a part of online.
That is funny.
I was just playing as a robot, and I was just playing with some bots, and some dude came in like, hey, man, we're going to play a game over here. You want to come with us? I'm like, sure, man, come on. And we all jumped into a map together and just started killing each other and like, oh, man, I got you. Yeah, it was like what people wanted online gaming to be. Like the ideal of what online gaming was supposed to be happened to me, and it was so brief.
That's funny. I like it. I think that makes a terrific amount of sense.
Yeah, and ToeJam and 3.
Well,
I love that game.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
You're actually alone on that one. I didn't love that game.
I loved it.
Hey, more power to you.
I remember
it would have still been my pick there.
If it would have came out on the Dreamcast, I'm pretty sure I would have taken the Dreamcast. No, but not for Jet Set Radio Future. Oh my god, that game.
Nice.
Cannot talk about that game enough.
All right. So
we're on our 5th picks now.
Yeah, which is funny because I'm looking up at my board and this,
getting harder, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I went back and forth around this stage of the draft, being like, do I want to do what I'm about to do? I think I do. It doesn't necessarily fit per se, but 5th pick, I'm taking the Game Boy.
Really?
I know it's not really a console per se, but
it has
to
the
me,
games.
If you were debating the place in history of various things
sure.
and what they've influenced over the years, if you look back to the original Game Boy, you're like, yep, that makes sense. Like, that's portable gaming, 20, 30, probably 40 plus years.
Before its time.
Like, and, I'm struggling for the words on this one just because, like, it's not a question. The Game Boy itself was fantastic.
What's funny, too, is I also look at console longevity. So I look at the Game Boy, and it came out of Gunpei Yokoi's design philosophy of lateral thinking of withered technology, where he looked at, like, Game & Watch series and said, we can take something that's completely antiquated, but then use it in a way that we can produce quality, like, Nintendo-grade content for it. Right. And what's funny is that you think about console longevity, like I just said, the Game Boy stopped because Nintendo decided to kill it with the Game Boy Advance.
Right. Well, that's another big part of my thing is, like, the Game Boy and its, like, various iterations show, like, this understanding of people want portable gaming, and they want it easier. They want it lighter. They want it faster. They want it brighter. Like, adding the backlight and the color screen was a huge thing.
Yeah, that, too.
The other thing I love about the Game Boy, by the way...
Super Game Boy.
Well, no.
Do.
Thanks for letting me finish. Was if you found one today, like just lying on the street, and you put in 4 fresh
you'd probably
batteries,
still play it.
99% chance it would work.
Yeah.
I mean, then the Game Boy is famous for, and I saw this in New York, weirdly enough,
the Desert Storm.
The Desert Storm one that got like blown to shreds or whatever.
And it still works.
It is a phenomenal system. There's something kind of charming about like the green and yellow screen aesthetic. And really just I'm taking this as a symbol for the entire history of handheld, portable gaming. I think it launched something that the industry didn't necessarily know it needed at the time, but looking back, you're like,
How could we go without
You're
this?
like, that's the foundation. Like, that's where it came from.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's also funny, too, that you bring it up, because the way I've always thought about the Game Boy, like, to me, it holds a really odd parallel space with the Neo Geo.
Sure.
Because whereas the Neo Geo was kind of killed by its own ambition, the Game Boy was killed by its lack of ambition. The Game Boy won by its lack of ambition. Excuse me, I got those mixed up.
Okay.
So, because if you actually look at the console lifespans of the Neo Geo and the Game Boy, they're about the same. Because SNK made an arcade platform and said, you want the arcade experience, we can get you that at home console versions, whatever. But they, as a platform maker, SNK, had one console, and then it worked for like 13 to 15 years. And whereas the Game Boy just came out and said, like, we want a portable alternative to our Nintendo games, lasted to 13 years. And I think that's just a really interesting parallel that I've always noticed.
It's kind of funny, actually. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting, because I remember playing, even as recent as Garou, Mark of the Wolves for the Neo Geo. That came out in, like, 2001.
So
it
weird.
It was a 10-year-old console, and it was making, like, top-tier games for it. That's cool.
That is cool. I like it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And people did that for the Game Boy.
Well, and again, I think it comes back to, like, the entire... It's not a home console, per se, but as, like, a portable console...
Yeah.
I mean, they're terrific. They're great. I still have an old Game Boy Advance just for old games if I ever want to go back and play them.
Ever since the Hyperkin Retron 5, ooh, I can play all my Game Boy games.
Right. Well, and like I love the future of it. I'm going to cannibalize one of my own picks that I thought about making because I think it's kind of one and the same. Even like the 3DS, I think is a terrific thing.
Yeah.
Virtual console, handheld system.
Hand-holding system.
Handhold system. And
Nintendo.
And the whole 3D, like that whole idea of depth. And like now that designers are kind of trying to figure out and succeeding at figuring out how to take advantage of that, like I think it's great, and it shows a willingness to push forward and innovate and offer new things that you don't really see a lot of in other consoles necessarily.
What's interesting is that you say that because I was hearing the exact opposite.
Really?
Where like what is it? A new One Piece game came out, and it's made by a company who does like kind of big 3D open world beat 'em up games.
Okay.
And it's being released on the Wii U, PS3, and 3DS. And 3DS is comparable to the Wii U and PS3. And people are like, why is this? And the reason was that this guy on Rev3 Games, I don't remember his name, but he was reviewing the game and he said, it looks fantastic, and I wondered why, because I honestly thought my 3DS slider was broken because every time I wanted to turn the 3D on, it wouldn't work. And it was like, wait a minute, so this game is made for the 3DS, but does not utilize 3D at all, and yet the game looks phenomenal. And he's like, so when you think about what the technology for the 3DS is supposed to do, it has to render, the game essentially twice in order to give you that 3D depth look.
Right.
So imagine if the kind of power that would be is untapped by people choosing to pursue that. Like if you wanted to get better looking games, it would be like, hey, this thing that I don't care about or doesn't offer anything to my game, we can just turn that off and make something look a little more polished or focus more on development. Because I think up to this point, the only game that runs 60 frames per second flawlessly in 3D is the Mario Kart game. And that is being designed in-house at Nintendo, working on whatever technology they have to make the best games possible for it. So if you had a person out there, like a developer out there, who said, I want my game to look better, I don't care about 3D, hey, look at all this untapped power I have.
Well, then, what's the problem? Leave it in the hands of Nintendo and tell whoever made whatever One Piece is to fuck off.
No, it's just...
Do it.
There's room for both.
Do it now.
I think that's cool.
Do it into the mic.
Eiichiro Oda, I hate your manga series. It's gone too stupid.
So you can fuck off.
Yeah. Actually, I would love to meet you and talk to you, but right now it sucks. I don't like it anymore.
I will express no such sentiment. Anyway, Fifth Pick! Yay!
Yay! So, okay. Moving on to my next one. I actually struggled on this because I had to choose between the remaining PlayStations. And so I had to really think long and hard about what I wanted in terms of the experience of what each of those offered.
They're all very different.
And it was close, but I chose the PlayStation 2.
Smart. Right choice.
Yeah,
right choice.
It is the right choice. And so, harping on again what you said about the NES to the SNES, The PlayStation to PlayStation 2 was a big jump.
Incomparable.
And when I think about, as I was sitting there and I was thinking about the experiences I had with the PS3, because I love my PS3 and I still play it today.
Same.
But I think it's still, by and large, that extension of what PlayStation 2 was, just like in HD.
Yep.
With better graphics. When I think about like Metal Gear Solid 2, the only Square games I liked on that console, the Bouncer and Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, those games, the experiences that you didn't get anywhere else, like when Rez came out, and music games in general.
Yeah.
I played them on PlayStation.
Forward.
I played God of War, I played Jak and Daxter, I played all of these, so many memories of just really quality experiences that, by and large, would be exactly the same on any other console, but weren't. They were on PlayStation.
Yeah.
So that's... honestly, what more is there to say about PlayStation 2? Oh, and it could play DVDs. Okay, sure.
Well, I think it's funny because you mentioned that kind of in passing, and I think that's a big part of it. And
well, yeah, in terms of like what it offered it to the consumer, like it can play DVDs. It's what killed the Dreamcast, really. The Dreamcast could play DVDs.
Well, and I didn't have the PlayStation 2 on my list at all.
Really?
And that's only because I started scrapping like all the PlayStation iterations and just focusing on slightly different things.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to put one of the other PlayStations on there, because PlayStation 1 obviously was on the list.
Oh, yeah.
And if I had to pick another one, it would have been the PlayStation 2. Even from like something as stupid as like an aesthetic standpoint,
yeah,
I think the PS2 is one of the coolest looking consoles of all time.
And including like its remodel and its original version and shit.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that it really sort of gave you the option to stand it one way or another, which for whatever reason...
For some reason it was really cool.
Yeah, like it's a total nothing.
It's a vertical system!
It's a total nothing factor.
Yeah.
Like, I remember a ton of very fun games on that system.
Dude, for real. And I think the last console to ever use a multi-tap. Because the
Almost
Bouncer...
don't need to anymore.
Yeah, because they all have 4 ports and shit.
By the way, can we take Sony to task a little bit for not learning that lesson from 1 to 2? Why? Come on. The 64, when it was a direct competitor with the PS1, had 4 controller spots.
Well,
why would you have not added 4 controller spots?
Well, it's about understanding at the time what you wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like when fucking people complained about the Genesis only having 3 buttons.
Which, by the way, I think is funny because...
Because who gives a shit?
Well, it worked fine, more or less, but they made those 6-button variants, and nothing took advantage of it. I was like, well,
fighting games did, and like because when you had a 3-button control when you played Street Fighter on Genesis, you had to push Start to change to kicks. And it's like, how do you even play this game?
Okay, now that feels broken.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
So like when people say like guffaw, you know, like when they look at like 3 buttons, what could you have done with 3 buttons? It's like, dude, at that time, games were just like, you can throw an item or shoot something, you can jump, and then with this, you can, like, super jump or use an item or some shit. It's like, that's what the thought was.
Sure.
So when you thought about, like, cooperative play in a game, you have your best friend sitting right next to you, or your little sister or brother or some shit. It's like, hey, let's play a game together. You're not thinking of, hey, let's get 3 other dudes in this room and start going to town on Smash Brothers or some shit. Because that thought just hadn't occurred yet.
I guess. Still gonna take him to task a little bit. Nintendo got it. Nintendo got it right away. So F you, Sony. Just kidding.
You done wrong, Sony.
I love you.
You done wrong.
You're so great. You made 2 of the greatest consoles that I've ever played. Good job.
There you go. All right.
So we're on to our bonus pick?
Yes, our bonus 6th pick. What are you going to take?
Bonus pick. All right. There's a couple things left on my...
Bonus block.
There's a couple things left on my board. I'm going to skip over what I had at 11 and jump straight to 12. Taking the Xbox One.
Xbox One?
I'm
really?
taking the Xbox One.
You don't even have one and you take it.
That's one of the funny things about this. I don't have an Xbox One. I refuse to buy one right now until they make it in some measure backwards compatible.
Here's hoping.
That part's all fine. I'm taking the Xbox One for a different reason. I'm taking the Xbox One because I think, and it really bothers me that Microsoft has more or less backed off of it in some sense, but I think it's the perfect sort of synthesized, idealized blend of what like home console entertainment is going to become.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that forward thinking that I've given Sega so much credit for in the Xbox One with regards to, the always online feature, which everyone sort of got freaked out about.
Yeah.
And, the non-video game aspects of it, the TV aspects, the cable box aspects, the fact that you can sign in to your ESPN account and get, fantasy stats and updates real time for your fantasy team, like tracked in like a little box score border while you're watching the game on the Xbox, I think is a terrific value add.
I'll tell you right now, I actually have an Xbox One, and what was really cool was when I just bought the system, and I was just really into some Dead Rising 3, but like Monday Night Raw was on, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, Xbox Snap TV, boop, and then I was able to watch Raw and play Dead Rising.
It's cool, and my buddy has an Xbox One, and I feel like the voice command works better than I expected it to. It
does.
Which is cool, and again, it bothers me a little bit that, I mean, we're still sort of in the infancy, so who knows where it's going to go.
Right.
It bothers me a little bit that people are so resistant to these new things that Microsoft wanted to do, and they're like, just give me a system where it's just games. I just want to play games. I don't need any of this other stuff. It's like, fine, but at least please recognize the future potential for all of this other stuff, because we're probably going there one way or another.
Right.
I just don't think people see it yet.
For me, it's interesting that you say that, because I actually was really enamored with my Kinect for the first couple of times that I've used it, and I was able to say, hey, sign me in, do all this kind of stuff. The convenience it offers for me, like it. People look at new technology and they are equally scared and excited for it because they instantly think when a corporation does it, it's going to be used for nefarious purposes. Things are going to be gathered about you.
Boy, and I know that feeling.
And I will say, like, it actually got to the point where I actually got rid of my Kinect. I traded it in. Like, the convenience it offered didn't kind of pair with this weird peace of mind that I still kind of won from my system.
Sorry. I don't know if that came through. I was readjusting your tinfoil hat, you paranoid weirdo.
You fucking... It's for some reason that certainly kind of resonates to me. Because, like, when my console was on always on mode, or even when it was off, it was just like, there's this camera, there's just kind of... Whoop.
So you're expecting that they're just going to creep on you? It's all an NSA, Illuminati, NWO conspiracy. And
I can't go there yet, because I've never really seen anybody been busted by what they did on a Kinect camera and shit.
Yeah, but because you haven't heard of them. Because they were just kidnapped in the middle of the night, and now they're an unperson. 1984 is real.
You really just... For some reason, even me, who was really positive about it, I just kind of like, whatever. If I can get like $30 or $40 for this, I'll get rid of it. I don't care enough.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a perfectly legitimate reason to get rid of it. I'm just giving you a hard time. Because I don't think you're expressing something that people don't feel. I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, that is actually how I feel. Is that it's a conspiracy, and I don't want them prying into my business.
Yeah.
Which I usually say, maybe this is wrong with me, but get over yourself. Is I guess what I'm getting at.
It's narcissistic to think that the government gives a shit about you.
Assholes. It's the same, it's the equivalent of, you wouldn't care what people thought of you if you realized how infrequently people did think of you.
Yeah.
It's the whole principle of, I don't know, maybe that's immaterial. In fact,
I think that was the very first time I ever heard that today, was you said that to me, and like we were just driving here and you said that, and I was like, oh, okay.
That's why it's fresh in my mind. I love it. It's a great quote. It's a great, philosophy, more or less. It's totally immaterial to the draft. I don't know why I brought it up. But.
We live in a culture of self-obsession, so when something either threatens or even like does in tandem to that, we're like, maybe this isn't really what I want.
Yeah.
You realize how selfish you are.
Bang.
Some real shit just got talked.
Yeah, real cast.
Okay.
Bonus pick.
Bonus
Number
pick
6.
for me. Okay, so this is going to make me feel like a fucking fanboy. But PlayStation 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I took 4 Nintendo consoles.
I took all the PlayStations except 4.
3 PlayStation consoles.
Yeah, so because when I look about like the last generation of consoles, the Wii was my favorite because of the experiences it offered, and it was great. We already talked about why it was great.
Right.
But when it came to choosing between Microsoft or Sony for your big old HD games, I fucking loved my PlayStation to death.
Yep.
Like, as soon as it is. And I
just pointed at mine, audience.
Yeah, and it sucks that the backwards compatibility got removed, whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, it felt the closest approximation to what Nintendo was doing with its console, with the big old grand budget HD, everything.
Yep.
Because, PlayStation Classics, whatever, you could market the comparisons, but I think in terms of what they offered as a service with PlayStation Plus, especially later.
Yeah, PlayStation Plus is a great service.
I actually bought a bigger hard drive for my PlayStation because all the cool free shit I got.
PlayStation Plus, now that I think about it, might be like the spiritual successor to Sega Channel.
Because it lets you just play shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole delivery of Sega Channel, the whole delivery method is antiquated now.
Yeah.
You do it all via the internet.
Like,
That's kind of how it feels. Is you're basically just renting in the form of
as long as you
games.
have the... It's like...
As long as you have the service.
It's, for me, it was the closest thing we ever got to, like... It's the closest thing we actually are getting right now to, like, a gaming Netflix, where it's just like, hey, we offer you a bunch of games a month. We also offer you discounts if you want to purchase things.
Right.
But also, hey, check it out. Like, Dark Souls is for free. And I'm like, really? So that piqued my interest in that franchise. So maybe I'll go play it.
Well, and it's a great means...
And a delivery of actual quality experiences.
Yeah.
Because, like, I look at the Games for Gold program, that's the comparative to games now on Xbox Live. And, like, I look at Halo Spartan Assault was one of their first games they gave. The little top-down twin-stick shooter featuring Halo characters. And, like, that's cool. It's a fun little distraction. But, like, when you get games from PlayStation, from Sony, like Infamous 2 and fucking Spec Ops The Line...
Oh. God, what a game.
Like, experiences that you get with the service that they offer is something that isn't compared to yet.
Yeah.
Also, mentioning Infamous 2, that was my favorite game of last generation, period.
Wow.
It was. It was just that good of a game to me. And I can list off all the reasons why, but it just was. I still turn on my PlayStation 3 to play games for it. There are still games being put out for it that I still actually want to play.
That's true.
Right now, I just picked up Earth Defense Force 2025, big old insect shooting Japanese metropolitan monster movie robot game. Crazy shit going on everywhere. You fly around and you blow up buildings and giant ants, and it's like, it's an experience that wouldn't keep a lot of people coming back to a console, but I do.
Yeah.
I love my PlayStation 3.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, I think we've said a pretty fair piece on all the things we were talking about here.
Agreed.
Honorable console mentions for me. Let's see. Do you have any in mind while I think about it?
Yeah, sure. No, my list is pretty simple. I'm just going to read through the rest of my list, basically.
Oh, wait, actually, can I jump in first? I'm sorry.
my
I
God.
just remembered.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Jesus.
Can you do it while I think about it? Okay, I thought about it.
I did, because it's actually on my list. It's the only one left on my list.
This is a
The
disaster.
Nintendo GameCube.
This is, that's literally what I was about to say.
I got it first!
It's not a race!
It's still a draft now, bitch.
Out of control.
No. Okay. So, the GameCube, for me, it was the very first console I ever bought. Like, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
Because I went out and I said, you know what? I want a fucking GameCube because Melee is awesome. Yeah. And then I bought it. And it's funny because I try to look back on specific memories of having, like, buying games for it, but I can only really remember buying the console and having that be the biggest memory for it. There were really great games for it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember having Killer 7 and Beautiful Joe when those games came out.
Fair.
Like, a lot of experiences on the GameCube, it was oddly memorable without necessarily having games for it, which was interesting because, like, I had maybe, like, 4 or 5 games for it, and that was enough to make it on my list.
Agreed, and you were kind enough, by the way, dear brother, to let me borrow it when I went to college.
That's right, yeah.
It holds a big place in my freshman year memory, and it's the same thing. Like, it was a great social piece, because we had Smash Brothers, which was a ton of fun. Super Mario Sunshine was great, and then, like, I had MVP Baseball, like, 2005.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I had, and that's really all I wanted. I would also argue, maybe you disagree with this, but I'm going to argue it. Best controller ever.
It was a damn good controller. One problem. Triggers.
The triggers weren't perfect.
The friggin' soft-ass marshmallow, deep-set pieces of shit.
They were a little bit... That was a little much. But
God.
As far as comfort, I have to imagine that the controller is made up of ground-up plastic from all of the E.T. cartridges they buried in the desert. And, like, that terribleness just permeated it to an unacceptable level.
It plays into the Nintendonium argument, where, like, you know, you look at Nintendo...
That can't be real.
It's not real. It's just a thing. It's a term.
I didn't mean I don't think it's a real element. It's not going in our periodic,
when we do our periodic table
next
draft.
week.
It is now. Honorable mentions from me. No, because, like, everybody talks about the durability of certain game consoles, and Nintendo was always really good at that, because they made consoles essentially for children, stupid-proof. So if you dropped it from, like, 3 stories, it'd be fine. Or if it got blown up in Desert Storm, it'd be fine.
That's disappointing, because a lot of people asserting that these things are unbreakable were not kids.
Yeah.
It was young adults and adults.
Yeah, because they're just as stupid. But, not us.
No.
We have a podcast.
I've never thrown a controller.
All right, so honorable mentions for you.
Yeah, on track. That's where the train is. On the tracks. On the rails.
Okay, so
pulling into the station 15 minutes early.
That's us.
Yeah, you know it.
Just fucking talk.
Fine. Honorable mentions, I've really only got 2 since GameCube's out of the way.
Yeah.
I was going to go Atari 2600 because as far as, whatever... No, if you ask people, like, what's the first video game system? They'd say Atari.
Along came Atari.
Sure, and whatever Atari, to me, really best captures, like, the original spirit of creativity.
And even just games and play.
It was just like, look, here's a thing. It's going to have games that you can play and interact with. And then, like, well, if we're going to have a system that makes games... what games should we make? And that's when the imagination, just explodes outward. And it's like anything you can think of.
Yeah, and for me, it also ties into, remember, like, the early arcade scenes and stuff? I mean, we talk about things like Pong, but there was a lot more than Pong.
Yeah.
And it all played into the sensibility of, like, this new emerging kind of geek chic stuff.
Right.
Of, like, I can program computer games.
And there were no rules. There was no established guideline of what is, or should be. It was just like... this is a thing. Use your imagination, which I love, and I think the audience will agree.
Okay.
All right. Well.
Before we get into like any honorable mentions, I just want to make one more honorable mention of a game of last generation that is just, for me, completely unprecedented in its amazingness and its gangsta-liciousness. 50 Cent Blood on the Sand.
Put it back in your pants.
Oh, that game.
Don't laugh like that after I accuse you of...
putting...
you
dick.
Go ahead. Somebody like 50 Cent... Blood on the Wiener. Jesus, keep it together.
Can't now.
Good.
Great.
Good.
That game is just every reason to be terrible, but it's amazing. And play it. You will laugh, and you will have fun.
It's definitely campy.
Yeah?
Like, that didn't sound
Gangsta
positive.
campy.
It is, yeah. Is that even a genre?
It should be.
Should be.
Yeah.
50 Cent?
You are a pioneer.
I'm sure you're listening.
Yeah, you are a pioneer. I'm sending this to you right after the show.
If you would like, we would be more than happy to let Vitamin Water sponsor the show.
Yeah, that'd be great. I drink Vitamin Water. My favorite, Vitamin Water Zero, Go-Go Berry. Sweet, refreshing, hydrating. Kevin Hart, where are you at?
Man, you are a lot better at lying about this than I am. I would have done a terrible job, but I've been like, I drink Vitamin Water, all the vitamins, and
the water.
I love the orange flavor. I just assume there's an orange flavor. I don't know what it's called.
It's got purple stuff in it.
Oh, come on. Why'd you have to go there?
Because...
Why'd you have to segue 50 Cent into purple stuff?
I segmented... I went from Vitamin Water to purple stuff. Dick.
Didn't feel that way.
Blood on the Wiener. Ew.
Don't make that the title.
Ew.